Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is in Washington today for talks with his American counterpart. LeBlanc and Canada's chief trade negotiator Janice Charette are meeting with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer as pressure builds ahead of the July 1st mandatory review of the Canada-United States-Mexico Trade Agreement, or CUSMA. In a letter to his U.S. and Mexican counterparts, LeBlanc says Canada wants to see the deal renewed, calling it highly beneficial for all three countries. But Ottawa is signaling it is open to changes, acknowledging that either the U.S. or Mexico may want to propose what LeBlanc describes as, quote, improvements to strengthen North American competitiveness. For more on what to expect, I'm joined by David Paterson, Ontario's representative in Washington. Mr. Paterson, thanks very much for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So Minister LeBlanc's letter certainly sends, I think, a clear message. Canada is willing to talk. Of course, formal discussions with Washington still haven't started. The U.S. and Mexico are talking, on the other hand. So in your view, how significant is that gap? And what does it tell you about where Canada stands in the administration's priorities?
I don't think it's anything to worry about. We've had Janice Charette down here a number of times, meeting with USTR on a preliminary basis. I saw both her and Dominic LeBlanc here in the embassy today. And so those discussions have been ongoing for over a year now in terms of many sort of preliminary discussions the federal government's having on particular issues. We're just really very pleased to see us getting down to it now, seeing them meeting, particularly those of us in Ontario where we are really in the crosshairs of these 232 tariffs in areas like steel derivatives, and certainly the auto sector. And so it's time to get on with getting a deal, and really pleased to see them here, and we'll be behind them 100%.
And I'll get to those 232 tariffs and especially the auto sector, of course, because that's a big industry in your province. But I just want to focus on the uncertainty around the future of the agreement, because it's wreaking havoc on the Canadian economy. The country has now seen 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Of course, that final most recent quarter might be revised. We'll see. But we do know that business capital investment has also declined for 5 consecutive quarters. Companies essentially are in a holding pattern. They've been there for months, waiting to see how things pan out. How much urgency do you think Ottawa should be bringing to these talks?
Lots of urgency, and I think there's urgency in the United States as well. I've been here in Washington for 2.5 years. Much of my time is spent meeting with American businesses. They're the ones that pay these tariffs, whether it's the 50% tariff on steel or aluminum, which is needed to make pickup trucks and RVs and all types of other things in the American economy. So the impact of tariffs is definitely being felt by the U.S. Industries. We spend a lot of time. We'll have Premier Ford down here next week meeting with many of those key industries as well. And so there'll be another party in the room when these discussions take place, and that will be the American business community, with expectations that if we have a deal to bring forward fixed problems, because people falsely sort of worry about whether or not the USMCA is up or down on July 1st. That's not what's happening here. What is happening is parallel discussions, Canada and US and Mexico, to address issues, and not surprising, there'll be issues after a number of years. Canada, as the Prime Minister today says, has about 30 issues on the table. We have excellent negotiators to address those. And if we can get those addressed properly, we expect in exchange to see tariffs addressed as well. And that's really a pattern that's taken place all around the world since since April 2nd of last year, Liberation Day, when the United States placed tariffs on about 100 countries around the world. And they've done about 20 deals that serve as a pattern that we can look at in terms of how to resolve the issues for Canada as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've certainly been getting more hints about what Washington may want from this new deal. Reuters reporting that the administration is considering requiring a minimum of 50% of U.S. content in vehicles to qualify for tariff-free access. The auto industry, of course, is very important to Ontario, more than $75 billion in exports in 2023. What's your response to this push for more U.S. content? How is that landing in your province?
Well, I've seen this movie before. I led trade negotiations for General Motors in Canada when we did the original USMCA. So my background is in the auto sector. We had a request for similar things the last time. We ended up, after the negotiations, not having some of those areas. And there's quite a series of these demands, if you will, or requests for change. They're all designed to try and encourage as much auto investment to move back into the United States. It's really not Canada that has been taking American auto jobs. It's frankly more investment moving into Mexico. So Mexico does have harder issues to deal with. They have a different trade imbalance. There have been issues of Chinese transshipment and other things that Mexico is working very hard to deal with as well. So our industry is going to have to do its job, and they are doing their job in educating the trade negotiators with data. It's an extremely complicated industry that trade negotiators will not be privy to in terms of the very detailed sourcing information that goes into a vehicle. So as I say, there is a very important role for the business community to educate and be part of this discussion, whether it's automotive, whether it is our agricultural industries, whether it's aerospace, whether it is entertainment industries. All of these different sectors have the data and the information. They have all lined up essentially way back in November of last year, making comments to the USTR that they want to see this deal renewed and they want to see it for the benefit of all three countries together. So we call that Fortress North America. We're stronger together. And that's really what we will continue as the province to push for. But the federal government has the hard job. They have to negotiate the details, and they'll take our advice. They'll take advice of the business community. And I think now is the time for those conversations to continue to accelerate.
You rattled off there a list of sectors of industries. I might add a few more, especially those that are targeted by those Section 232 tariffs, namely forestry products, and of course in your province as well, steel. That's one of our particular concern to Ontario. Give us a sense
forestry as well.
Absolutely. Give us a sense of what you expect Canada might be asked to concede in order to get some relief for those sectors.
Well, again, it's an interesting time because we've seen a lot of very high level commentary, whether we're ahead or behind Mexico. I think those issues are frankly less important than getting down to the specific issues. The list of grievances, if you will, from it sounds like Festivus, but the list of grievances from the United States are fairly well known. Our dairy industry, access to that, digital issues, digital streaming, and taxes paid by American companies for that. We've just touched on some of the auto issues. Some of the rule of origin issues in auto may expand out to cover other sectors and see some new requirements for sectors to meet a certain amount of content if they want duty-free passage. They want to stop cheaters. They want to make sure people actually follow the rules of origin. And that's something that's quite important because those of us that are part of the USMCA agreement, we are following this local sourcing requirement that other countries don't have to do. So others will face tariffs like we do, but they don't have limits on the content that they have to provide or requirements for American or North American content. And so we should have a better deal than any other country out there. And that's the expectation we would hold on the federal government to get us there. They've been working on that for over a year, but we need to include all of these key sectors, such as forestry, automotive, and others. And now is the time for that broader deal.
U.S. officials, including Ambassador Greer, they've repeatedly insisted that the tariffs, in some form or another, are here to stay, regardless of any future trade agreement or whatever form that takes. What do you think Canadians should expect, and what is a realistic best-case scenario when it comes to tariffs on Canada, do you think? Especially when it comes to autos, for example, where the Conservative leader is saying he's really pushing for a tariff-free auto pact with the Americans. Is that realistic?
Yeah, ideally we should push for where we have been, but I think a good instructive place to start is to take a look at those 20 different trade agreements that have been had with countries such as South Korea, Japan, most recently the European Union finally sort of aligning behind the deal that was made for that, the UK. These are the major trading partners of the United States. all of those countries were hit with a high level of tariffs and then were able to bring that tariff level down. In no case did they come down to zero. And so that is the expectation that is out there. But as I said, we do extra things that bear consideration, such as local sourcing. And we could look beyond the trade aspects as well to think about other issues that the Prime Minister has talked about, such as continental defense, such as critical minerals, such as the fact that Canada invests twice as much into the United States through our pension funds than the United States invests in Canada. And so when we hear that there are these demands from the United States, we should be confident and know that the United States needs Canada as much. They certainly need us for sourcing of everything from potash to uranium to aluminum, all those things right across the border and already deeply integrated with the United States. And so I'm glad we're finally at the table. I'm glad that we have great relationships with U.S. business, U.S. Congress, and I see a lot of momentum for just let's get a deal done that'll create jobs, that'll get investment off the sidelines in the United States as well as in Canada. That can help us reduce costs, reduce the cost of living. That's a big issue here in the United States with gasoline prices going way up. And national security as well. All those things are really important here in Washington. And so that's the daily life that we live with. We need to address those issues, but you can't do it from Canada. You've got to be here. I saw, as I said, Dominic and Janice here in the embassy today, and so I'm thrilled to see them out there starting to get at these issues. And I think we can do it in our mutual self-interest.
Well, we'll certainly be watching to see how things play out over the next few weeks and months. David Paterson, Ontario's representative in Washington, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
And thanks, Marc-André.